I finished university thinking, brilliant, I'm going to go back to the sports coaching company that had employed me before I went. And I'm going to go and tell them I've got a 2-1 from Brighton University. I've worked with the England golf team. My dissertation was on psychology. I did fundamental movement skills in children. Like, I'm a well-rounded academic now coming out, and I can't wait to put my spin on this business. And basically I walked through the door for a meeting with the CEO of the business they were basically a sports coaching company operating in lots of schools in the local area, doing PPA cover and after school programs and things like that. And I had that conversation, and I was basically offered my old contract back at the schools that I'd worked in during the summer, and pointed to a guy that I went to college with, and he's going to be your manager.
From Coordinate Sports, it's the Drive Phase, a show about sports founders, leaders and experts and the stories behind their business journeys. Our guest this episode is Ollie Bell, Commercial Services Director at CIMSPA. Ollie is committed to pushing the industry forward, building partnerships and shaping a recognised and respected sector. During the episode, we cover growing up on the South Coast in a family that loves sport, his first passion for gymnastics, and how these early experiences in sport and observing his father grow a successful consulting business shaped his outlook. Having first-hand experience of working his way through the sector and working alongside inspirational leaders, Ollie is well placed to support and grow the network. We discuss CIMSPA's current focus and vision for the future. This is a must listen for anyone working in the sector. Enjoy the show. Okay, so I'm delighted to have Ollie Bell with me today. He is the Commercial Services Director for the Chartered Institute for the Management of Sport and Physical Activity, or CIMSPA. They're working to shape a recognised and respected sport and physical activity sector that everyone wants to be part of. So welcome to the show, Ollie.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
No, really excited to get into it. Got a lot to talk about, CIMSPA and sector related. So looking forward to that. But to start off with, just to get give our listeners a bit of context and see where you come from, so I'll learn a little bit more about you. Would you be able to describe your childhood for us?
Yeah, sure. So grew up based on the south coast of the UK, grew up in between Winchester and Southampton, and was really passionate about sport and physical activity from a young age. So grandfather worked for the Hampshire County Council in sports and playing fields area. My auntie qualified as a PE teacher. Parents were very sporty. My dad played badminton at a high level. My mum was really into hockey. So sport was kind of always a really key part of life for me as a kid. Surrounded by it, exactly. And you kind of don't have a choice. And when it's great, and I was quite competitive by nature as well, and started off as a gymnast. I mean, we've gone right into the sports lane of my childhood, but that was
I mean, how was school for you? If you want to take a couple of steps back in terms of school, your experience at school, did sport play a big part of that? Like, do you have any big role models? Teachers, obviously nowadays it'd be sports coaches, etc., and teachers, PE teachers. But how was it for you back then growing up?
Definitely, school was average. I found my kind of close friendship group when I got to college. So school for me was sport, and school for me was getting through the education system, right? I didn't have lifelong friends that I met at school, but sport was the thing that I wanted to do, and it's how I spent every break time, every lunchtime. And yeah, in terms of role models, everyone that I looked up to was a couple of years above, and they were the coolest basketball player or best footballer or whatever. I ruled football out quite early on because it's not fun looking at 700 kids chase one ball around a field. But there's got to be other sports that I can kind of rise to the top in. So I played a lot of basketball at school, and it didn't really matter any sport. I was quite well rounded at sports and quite enjoyed playing them all. I was never the best at anything, but leadership wise and getting involved, that was always a big one for me.
But I guess you got that passion if you kind of surround, like, that's, I guess, the environment you grew up in with family and such, just to be taking part in everything and having an open mind.
100%. And the themes that carry through, which I'm sure we'll come on to later, that link into business and leadership and stuff like that, they're so apparent and translate so well from sport as well. So if you look at my first kind of dipping my toe into sport was gymnastics. It started off as a gym tot, sticking on a leotard at 3-4 years old and going in and jumping on boxes and bouncing on springboards. And gymnastics was great, and I got to a fairly decent level. I went to British finals. My claim to fame was I beat someone in a competition when I was about 8 that went on to win a gold medal, and still going on about it today. So it was all downhill from there. But
you want to name drop? Was that Lewis? Was that Lewis Smith? Was it?
It was Lewis Smith. I beat Lewis Smith on the
we might as well name drop him. Yeah.
That was my big game, and I've got the program framed. No, I'm joking. But yeah, so gymnastics taught me discipline, and it taught me about building core strength and working as a part of the team, but also performing individually. And I kind of moved away from individual sports after that because I love playing team sports.
But that discipline, gymnastics, is one of the, like, I guess, like swimming, etc. From an early age, it's a lot of training, isn't it? A lot of hours in the gym.
Absolutely. Yeah, kind of in my best years, I was training before school, which is cool. It's not cool for your parents driving you around the country to competitions in London and Brighton and up north, but or getting you in at 5:30 into the gym before then picking you up and taking you to school for the day. But it was good fun for me. And this kind of twilight zone in the evening of just being able to go and crack on and see all your friends and your mates that you've got and that you've made through that sport was really good. So gymnastics was that foundation for me.
Just to circle back in terms of your parents, I know you've gone into like this commercial side of sport, I guess, initially. Was that, I guess, influenced by your parents at all, or family, the entrepreneurial, or the drive you to be business focused?
Yeah. We never had loads of money when I was a kid in the family, but we weren't poor either. So home life was decent. We had money for me to do gymnastics and clubs, and my sister as well. Like we lived in a nice part of the country, and there was lots of activities and things available to us. But I kind of saw my dad transitioned from being employed to setting up his own business maybe when I was about 8-9 years old, and benefited from that. And slowly life started to change as he became more successful in his line of work as well. And he was a management consultant and did a lot of training and education, which again is so closely linked to what I ended up doing, which was being in education and commercial development. And my dad was great for for his flaws. One of the things that he did do really well was immersed me in the business world that he was in. Took me along to meetings. He got me doing work experience with him, and these weren't with average people. This is global CEOs that he was working with. So immediately it bust the boundaries of people are just people, relationships are just relationships. And if you finish a day doing work experience where really you're just carrying your dad's bags, but he gets you on your feet and he gets you leading a few sessions. And actually, when I got to kind of university stage, there were so many themes from sessions that we were doing for sport to make sport more engaging and to engage maybe athletes with disabilities and things like that, or bringing in psychology, that I'd sit down with him at Christmas when I was back from university, and we'd create programs together that translate through to business, and he would then use those in the coaching that he'd do afterwards.
Nice.
So yeah,
you need some commission off those programs then if he's reselling them.
Yeah, you know what it's like with your dad. You can try.
Try to.
Quite happy to fund the Thursday night beer money for in return. So yeah.
So gymnastics, obviously you're taking it to national levels, decent, well, more than decent competitive level. Did you follow that through university onwards then? You went down to Brighton Uni, right? Is that correct?
Went off to Brighton Uni. Yeah, I did. And yes, sport was always the theme, and physical activity and coaching and education, but gymnastics stopped for me at 13, 14. And I had some successes, and I was obviously performing at a fairly decent level, but there were lads in my team that were quite clearly able to outperform and were on that journey. And you kind of reached the point, or I did as a junior athlete, whereas well, the other thing that happened to me is I didn't really hit puberty until I was like quite late on in my teens. And I wasn't necessarily still a gymnast at that point, but you can start to see at kind of 11, 12 years old, you go away for the summer, or you're less intense in your training program. And the lads were just coming back with calves double the size and
taking it onto another level.
And immediately they can just outperform, and the complexity of the routines that they're doing goes up as well. So you fall behind quite quick if that strength and body composition comes through just growing up in adolescence. So that was one of the things early on. I was quite late in terms of development. So that definitely had an impact. So I hung up the leotard about 13. So just kind of into secondary school, they were kind of my last gymnastic years. But because I loved sport and I wanted to play team sports, I was already kind of negotiating the gymnastics time with hockey and basketball and cricket and stuff like that. I played a lot of sports, and I went on to Brighton Uni and studied coaching because that was the kind of concurrent theme that sat in all of them. It was educate. Even if I was doing stuff with my dad or listening to my dad talk about his business, it was always education and training and supporting other people being the key thing. And yeah, that took me on to dedicate my career and my academic studies in that field of coaching and development.
I'm interested because a sports coaching degree, and we've had a couple of talks on the pod before about it, in terms of what it looks like for you then going to Brighton versus what it looks like now, or what it should look like, or whether it's changed. I know there's a lot of conversation around practicalities. I know similar to other degrees like sports science, etc. The degree itself potentially, depending on where you went, maybe wouldn't set you up for a role in the industry. What was your degree like? Did you have that kind of that inbuilt coaching badges and coaching practice out in the field, or what was it like for you?
Yeah, 100%, that point is worth exploring.
Yeah, I mean, in your current role as well, I know we'll get onto that for sure.
I mean, part of the solution to the problem that we've kind of just touched on there is the day-to-day and why I do the job I do, and the reason that CIMSPA exists as an organization. So again, yeah, there's a huge link there. But from my perspective, the sports coaching degree that I did at Brighton was just an easy option for me. It was a BSc, but it was something that naturally I fell into. I had experience there. I played lots of different sports and at a decent level. So I kind of selected that degree because I was quite like the psychological element, but also it looked fun and there was some practical in it and that kind of thing. The issue that I take with universities and the issue that I take with the course that I did is that is the output, it's the employability bit. And outside of the kind of decent academic side of degrees and qualifications, university taught me how to write, it taught me how to research, it taught me how to create an argument, taught me how to stand on
theories, right? Yeah,
present something. Yeah, exactly. Also taught me how to stay out till 3 a.m. and spend all my money on student loan in a week. But the majority of the program was really good. The problem that I think sports degrees had and probably still have is the output and the employability links and the relationships with operators. Often you can look around and see degree programs that have literally just been created because it's a way to drive students in and, dare I say it, a way to commercialize different programs.
You're always going to have that attraction. I mean, sport for a lot of young people, male and female, sports coaching is just attracts people, right? Just by the name of it. But yeah, absolutely. It's a bit of an easy win, I suppose, to put that program on.
Yeah, you're right. And it's just how many people of the 15 that enroll in the sports coaching course end up getting employed and progressing within the sector in which they studied. And it's very few. If I look at my cohort from Brighton, a few have gone on to do PGCEs and will no doubt be the specialist teacher at the schools when it comes to sport. But there are very few that have stayed in the sector. And I think that's representative of that kind of gap between the world of work and education and higher education. And I think that's where some work needs to be done. Employability, soft skills, relationship management, commercial development, all of those kind of things that are so important. The other thing that you need to do when you leave university is the journey just starts again. There aren't many grad schemes in our sector, if any. So you've got to then learn how to communicate your value. And my story was I finished university thinking, brilliant, I'm going to go back to the sports coaching company that had employed me before I went. And I'm going to go and tell them I've got a 2-1 from Brighton University. I've worked with the England golf team. My dissertation was on psychology. I did fundamental movement skills in children. Like, I'm a well-rounded academic now coming out, and I can't wait to put my spin on this business. And basically, I walked through the door for a meeting with the CEO of the business they were basically a sports coaching company operating in lots of schools in the local area, doing PPA cover and after-school programs and things like that. And I had that conversation, and I was basically offered my old contract back at the schools that I'd worked in during the summer at the same hourly rate, and pointed to a guy that I went to college with, and he's going to be your manager. And I was thinking, really? Yeah. That's the output now, and that's the journey that I'm on, is the same, everything that I had before, the same polo shirt and pair of shorts that I was wearing before I'd spent 30 odd grand on a degree and dedicated my time to studying a field. And you look around, and I looked around, and there wasn't much else available, and that's quite hard. And I did put on the pair of shorts and the polo shirt, and I got back to work because there wasn't another option. And I'm also not saying that that's the wrong route for people, but there needs to be some recognition for the academic performance of graduates when they come out, and some alignment to the career pathway that you're then in. I had more to give, and I wanted to give more, and I also wanted to be around people that I could look up to and learn from. And being given back your old contracts at the same hourly rate is quite,
I guess, disheartening. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like those classic stories about you get a 2-1 or a first in sports science, but you couldn't get a job as a PT in a gym. You got to start again and go and get and do the courses that you could have done without the degree. So yeah, I know it's always a challenge. Well, in terms of that, then you've gone back into coaching, and you were working, like I said, working in and around schools, etc. In that role, in that organisation, did you kind of work your way up and like go into management, or what was the next career path for you?
Yes, I worked my way up I managed to negotiate out of some coaching hours to learn to do some kind of marketing and business coordination, like some development. And it was more keep the good coach in the company that is Ollie, rather than use him and develop him and teach him marketing. Because
good coaches are hard to find. That's the other thing from the business points.
Yeah, it's exactly it. And I was quite happy to be there, but I did disengage, and I fell out. And for a period of my life, then I odd things and lived other people's lives and spent more time kind of enjoying my recreational time for a period of years and doing a bit of work for my dad over here and a bit in the sector. And I kind of fell out of the sector because I thought it's a false promise unless you really have the skill set to inject yourself into an organization that will nurture and develop you. And there are some big corporates in our now, but like you said, there's been a lack of support and collaboration between employers to tell the higher education and education partners that operate within sport and physical activity what the market needs of people. If Trampoline Fit suddenly gets taken up by 1 million people in London, then that message needs to come through so that we help inside a degree program build Trampoline for it, because it's representative of what the market want, and therefore there are guaranteed jobs in that space. So using your sports science example, there are only so many jobs available at Southampton Football Club or Manchester United, but actually when you look at the one individual over 10 years that did manage to land that job, that's how they promote and market the courses. So we've got to do more for the 95% that aren't that Ashley Jones that walks directly into Man United, and usually it's because there's a relationship there elsewhere and he's been given that opportunity. So yeah, more work needs to be done. And again, linking into CIMSPA, employers, the whole piece starts with employers, is analyze what the sector needs and then create training programs that are relevant, that provide the output so that we put people in the right positions that supports the market and help the nation get more action.
Yeah, I guess going off on a tangent slightly, I know it took a while. So there's an apprenticeship standard now, right, for the industry, for actual delivery sports coaching. That took a while to pull together, right? Do you think that was just, I don't know if you got insight on that one, but was that just kind of too many cooks in the room kind of thing, or was it just pulling everyone together or actually deciding on it? Because that standard now is pretty fit for purpose, robust, but it's something that's lacking for a long time, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's really important to set up different pathways. Higher education is not going to be for everyone. Apprenticeships are a decent route for many people and offer a lot of benefits. The specific standard that you're talking about and the process that we went through, I'm less close to. We've got heads of education and talented people at CIMSPA that lead those projects and the development of standards and run our professional development committees and professional development boards. I mainly look after the partnerships and the marketing and that kind of thing. Yeah. However, going back to that employer piece, you've got to create a system where employers have a voice and those meetings are chaired accordingly and those key points come out. And then whenever a new standard or a new program is created, that gets sign off from a board of people that represent the sector and basically become the voice of the sector to say that this standard is fit for purpose. And it goes back to, you look at the personal trainer qualification, to use your example from earlier on, and if there is no standardization of that, the Groupon cowboys come in and offer PT certificates for 6 hours of work online, and there is no robustness or comprehensive training program or assessment at the end. So we've got to create that standardized piece, and that's what we're kind of starting to see now as people put more effort into shaping what a role looks like, not today, but what the role of a personal trainer will look like in a couple of years, James, which is, it needs to encompass more stuff than just teaching a client how to count reps or counting reps for a client or programming for them, because what's expected of a personal trainer, using this example, is so much more beyond that. Now, you're expected to have counseling skills and you're expected to be able to understand someone's nutrition and these things that everyone are wearing on their wrists, around their necks and on their chests that track our data. Like, we're really informed now and the public are really informed. So the PT has just had pressure put on them to be able to program, analyze data, work with a load of different wearables. So we've got to make sure that comes through in the standards, and then speak to higher education to say, you've got to impregnate your degree program with these modules or this training program so that people walk out of the program work ready, and they're ready to walk into a job, as opposed to the route that I took, which was go and fight for a job. Yeah.
And are they receptive to that then, in terms of higher education? I guess difficult to change courses quickly and things like that, but are they receptive to the insights you're bringing from CIMSPA's point of view to say, look, you need to get this in your syllabus, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but over 100 universities that have sport and physical activity programs. And I think we're working with about between 30 or 40 of them. They're coming to us to say we need to map our programs to the standards, to the CIMSPA standards, which is great, because what we're starting to see now is programs that higher education offer adapt to what the market needs, going back to that employer partner piece, so that they will incorporate sports science degree with a PT qualification, or at least a level 2 gym instructor qualification. It will incorporate colleges. There's some pilots going on at the moment around qualifications that include, rather than just teaching about the history of sport or leisure or tourism, actually now what we're doing is we're supporting colleges to create programs where someone walks out ready to be a lifeguard, a pool assistant, an activity coordinator. So there's a number of jobs that someone can be recognized for immediately in the eyes of an employer, rather than us just sitting in the education tower with cigar smoke filled rooms deciding what programs to create and how to run them. So it's changing. There's been a huge shift, and I think people are looking at it through a different lens now, and universities have been amazing at kind of putting their front foot forward and starting to do that work as well off their own back.
So when you came back, I know you came back into the industry, or maybe before this, but you took up a position with England Hockey. What was that like compared to, I guess, working for governing body versus commercial organisations? Is it a different approach to delivery or different approach to the role?
It is. The work with England Hockey was light because it was coaching work whilst I was at university.
Right. Okay.
So it was great because I was working with some really talented people, and a few of them went on to work in the England team and stuff. And it was a way for me to kind of put everything that I'd learned in terms of the coaching world, and psychology was my kind of area that I focused on most, and kind of incorporating that into a real live coaching setting, which was the Sussex hockey team. And that was really cool. I mean, my career pathway was then that coaching organisation that I worked for, where it was about negotiating more responsibility than it was anything else. And like I said, I fell out and then ended up working with my dad for a year, and that was great because I learned about online education and digital education, because a lot of the companies that he was working with didn't want in-person workshops and face-to-face programs. So we would again look at the themes of sport, which ones are relevant, how do we build it into a management or leadership program, and then also how does digital look as an output for that learning. And that was cool because it taught me a lot about e-learning, and it taught me a lot about development, and I learned a lot about kind of learning principles and push and pull information, and when someone's sitting on a screen, how to motivate them to get through quite a detailed course or comprehensive course, blended learning and things like that. And then you do have
to really relevant for today's landscape then. Yeah,
absolutely, it translates through. And my first real job in the sector was after I'd left my dad's business to work with Future Fit Training, which were a leading training provider in the UK, and kind of came on as the relationship and partnership person, and kind of created a new area and stream of the business there. And then one of the ideas that we had early on, that myself and the MD came up with on a car journey, was we need to create an education platform that isn't this big, long, comprehensive 28-week course, but just something light and Netflix style of drop in, look at something, get some CIMSPA CPD for it, and easily meet your CPD quota for the year, but create topics that are relevant to people that are actually working in the sector. And we called it ProZone, and it won an award, and Future Fit were on a huge growth journey then, which was great. And I benefited from that and moved up through the organization from about 25, 26 years old until I was about 30, which was brilliant. And the organization did really well. And like I said, I was kind of allowed to play with the train tracks inside that organization. That was the responsibility, and it was the budgets that came with it, and ideas kind of got a chance to go beyond ideation into product development, and ProZone was born and that kind of thing. So that was a good time. And that probably is what you were alluding to in terms of, did you work your way up? In that organization I did, and I was ready. I was at a point in my life where I'd kind of done the messing around, I'd done the feeling sorry for myself that I didn't get this perfect job when I left university, and that became the kind of hotbed for me to start developing my own skills.
So, get something to get your teeth into, right?
Exactly. And I learned quite quickly as well in that business that if you can demonstrate your value to the point where you can make someone else money or make a business money, then you're fairly indispensable. You haven't got to worry about, am I going to keep my job? You haven't got to worry about if the business is making redundancies, am I on the list? And that then fuels a load of really negative conversations in the team and that kind of thing. Like, if you really poured a lot of time into my work during that period, and I think that's really important for, I'd say, anyone that's listening to this that's coming out as a graduate, or anyone that's kind of at a point in their career where they know they want to develop and they're ambitious. Like, pour yourself into it. It's merge work with your life and build that kind of, negotiate what you're doing and what you're working on. I'm probably not explaining that very well.
No, I mean, forgetting that entitlement to coming out of uni, because I think that might be a danger of the courses we're talking about with sports coaching. You spent a lot of money on that, right? So you should be entitled to a certain level of job or respect or whatever it is. So I guess, like you're saying, having to be able to swallow that and forget that and put in the hard yards to develop yourself again.
Exactly that. Yeah, it's just the start of another journey, and you're going to have to work for it, and you're going to have to learn how to communicate beyond that piece of paper that you walked out with, because a load of other people have got it. The little workshops you can do, or going on Google and searching something of how to nail an interview, it's not going to cut it. You've got to skill up and level up again, and you've got to learn great communication skills. There's, with technology coming in as well, the analogy that I use is, if you imagine a massive supermarket chain, the moment they work out a way for technology to replace a human, like self-service checkouts, that's coming in. It's viable for the business, it's better for the customer, but the one person that keeps their job out of the 27 till assistants is the one that's got the best knowledge of the technology, which takes learning and commitment, and not a fear that this is going to come in and take my job away, and the one with best communication skills, because when technology fails, you need someone that can help you solve that problem and keep your experience decent at that point. So yeah, I think it's really important that people embrace technology, and that you look at anything that's coming around the corner and kind of dedicate yourself to learning it. And I think that will only benefit yourself and the organization in the long run. So yeah, don't feel sorry for yourself. Master and learn what your employer needs, or build your own business based on gaps that are in the market and fill them.
Kind of touched on some stuff we're going to talk about later on, but I think probably now is a good time to talk about, I guess, CIMSPA, an overview for those who don't know. Most people will, but an overview of CIMSPA and what it does, and I guess your role within the organisation.
Yeah, so CIMSPA, you said it at the start, shaping a respected and recognised sector that everyone wants to be a part of. The sector and the workforce is very talented, and there's some decent people. We talked about the people that walk out with degrees. These are academics that have also learned the practical application of their skills and worked in some great places. They activate communities, they help support the NHS, potentially even bankroll the NHS in terms of preventing diseases rather than just focusing on treating diseases. So there's a huge amount there, and leisure is at the backbone of the UK. It's where everyone, certainly everyone that I speak to, learned to swim, or their first step onto a badminton court was with mum and dad or a couple of friends. And there's often facilities tied to schools, and it's the people that get, you remember your question at the start, is the people that get you going. It was the lad 2 years above me that had nearing in both ear that was amazing at basketball, that got me excited about playing basketball, and sport provided a reason for me to have a relationship with that person. So we've got to also support the people. Now, CIMSPA's role is to recognise people for what they actually bring to the table and the skill set that they have, and then work with employers, again, like we touched on earlier, to make sure that the education providers are creating standards that allow people to come out of the programme and be viable for the market, and actually be realised and recognised for the job and the role that they can bring.
In terms of your heading up, obviously commercial, but I suppose, what does that look like on a day-to-day? I mean, sense, so like you're commercial services director, what are those services and what does your time look like day in, day out?
Yeah, so time is split between looking after kind of the partnerships department, which look after all of our education partnerships, so the training providers that work with us, higher education partners, and also colleges and employers. So that forms kind of the partnership network. And there's an amazing team that will go out and speak to partners and understand their training needs, and then support them and their staff into membership. And then also I look after the marketing side of the business. So how do we communicate? How do we create campaigns that go through to those partnership network, and hopefully promote the membership value proposition of CIMSPA as well? And that's a really big ongoing piece for us, and something that kind of we dedicated a lot of time and effort to, that we'll start to see some stuff come out within the next 12-18 months that will really make sure that all of the insight that we've collated from the membership base and from the partnerships, that starts to turn into products that people can feel and touch and access. So that's another lane. And then the only other lane that I look after at CIMSPA is insight and business development. So that is both feeding up insight on behalf of the sector and the workforce and what that looks like, up to partners like Sport England, and working with strategic partners like UK Active and EMD UK, and making sure that we've all got this kind of single source of truth when it comes to the data and representation of the sector. And then business development pieces, sponsorship, supplier partnership. What does a benefits program look like? Do people want cheap cost of coffee, or do they want recognition? How do we promote training and ongoing education, and things that maybe the behavior isn't set yet, that like it is in the NHS, you start and you work your way up and you do certain programs and you change band and you specialize. Like, we're trying to create that system behind the scenes at CIMSPA, but we also then need to learn how to communicate that well so that people subscribe to it. What we don't want people to feel like it's additional work, or it's a must have because my employer told me. Our goal and my goal is to create a CIMSPA membership product that people can't wait to renew at the end of every year because it provides so much value. And there's some work to do, but we're getting there.
Good time to touch on it in terms of the financial model and how you're funded. Obviously, is it purely memberships, or is there any kind of government assistance? What's the financials behind it?
Financials behind CIMSPA is Sport England funded. So we map to Sport England's objectives and strategies, and we've got a team at Sport England that kind of represent us internally. And to meet those objectives, we receive money every 2 years. There's a slight model change going on at Sport England at the moment, but we're funded to deliver those objectives. Now, obviously, being a charity, there is commercial income that is drawn from memberships and partnership services, but that is all ploughed back into and reinvested in the ongoing development of the business. The only other areas that sometimes get funded are, again, through Sport England, or is if a project comes up. So big projects that we've worked on, or there's been quite a lot of kind of post-COVID recovery projects that we've been kind of tasked with supporting and running in partnership with Sport England. One that I led on this year was the Digital Marketing Hub, and that was people need to become financially sustainable again and recover and rebuild post-pandemic, and you can provide financial support and financial aid, which we have done, or training budgets through schemes like Retrain or Retrain to Retain that's coming out in October this year. And the DMH program is about teaching people the digital marketing skills that they need to be able to, one, increase their ability of being able to communicate online and to populations that maybe became detached or moved away, or that they lost contact with. And for years, lots of clubs and organizations and community sports programs worked really hard to get these members and these participants in, and actually COVID then disrupted that and left it fractured. So how do we help organizations and individuals reconnect and re-engage those communities that they fought so hard to build? And one of the best ways to do it, as we know, is learning how to use online tools. Now, back to education and university, very few sports programs that are academic that the training providers offer include any of those skills. There's no social media module, there's no communicating online through Facebook groups, there's no how to nail Google Near Me services so that people know when they're looking for Pilates that your club is 1 mile away.
And is that all? So that's all included in the digital marketing hub. So is that just for members, or is that open to public, or the sector at large?
Sector at large, yeah.
Fantastic.
You've got a lot of governing bodies, got a lot of individuals, completely free. There's a certificated program available through the Digital Marketing Institute, one of our partners. Google deliver a webinar every week for 11 weeks that's bespoke and tailored for our sector, which is amazing. And that is topics like how to set up Google Near Me services so that you can be found really easily and increase your visibility. We've had some amazing speakers on. We had Joe Wicks on talking about his journey and how he embraced digital and then used that to build the Body Coach brand. So that was amazing. And our launch podcast host was Jake Humphreys from the Ultimate Performance podcast and BT Sport presenter. Brilliant as well. Absolutely captured what we were trying to do. And like I said, we've had some amazing partners and representatives on there.
Is that kind of running long term, or is it a fixed period of time that it's available for?
It's available until the end of summer 2022, but we are hoping that, again, if people benefit from it and we can measure that impact that it's had and people want us to do it again, then we can put in a case with Sport England to hopefully have a second or third year as well. But we're growing it and changing it. It launched 2 months ago, so there's still a lot to come from that program. Alongside the program and the education, we're creating a lot of bite-sized learning and also looking at how do we kind of create done-for-you services. Google have offered mentoring to anyone that applies through the scheme, so they will personally mentor in small groups your business, and we're looking at creating our own version of that with some experts in there as well to set up your paid ad program, or to create your first community, or supply you with a load of templates that you can use for content. So it's a good one, and we just make sure that people know that it exists and that they have access to it.
So so much added value through that program for sure. I've got a question in terms of, I guess we call it sector transformation, or that path towards talking about digital marketing there, but digital at large, or culture change in the sector. Do you think there's I don't know if it still exists, with a perception problem in terms of, from the outside in, looking at the sector, what we actually do, communicating that to the wider population?
Yeah, I think it is changing. More work needs to be done our view at CIMSPA is we've got to build the system. We've got to build the home for the workforce and the people that work within it. And if we can do that, then we can then start to work on shaping public opinion and perception. If people that work here see themselves as the sports coach that has been handed the same pair of shorts and polo shirt that he had before he spent a load of money on a university degree, then we're not recognizing people for the role that they can play in the sector and for the impact that they have on young people, communities, providing safe environments. I could list a million things there that most people that are qualified can offer. But I do still think the public may look at roles like personal trainer as an aesthetic-based position where someone turns up at a gym and will write down on a piece of paper what your program is, and they'll support you to come to the gym once a week and charge you £35 an hour for the privilege.
Stand next to the treadmill or something like that. Yeah.
Exactly. And there are certain people that I think don't necessarily promote what we're looking to achieve. But I think on the whole, what we've started to see is that employers will now actively and openly say, unless you're coming to us with a CIMSPA membership or a certificate that has been endorsed by CIMSPA, we're going to have to work with you to get you up to speed unless you've got that, and then you work ready and we consider you work ready. That's now starting to feed in, and I think that's allowing people to be recognised for the job that they do and the skills that they have. We're moving to a model where we're going to start looking at awarding professional status. So yes, you become a member and yes, you have a job role, but actually what are your specialisms in that job role and what has been your commitment to your ongoing personal development as well? Right. So I might be a coach, a sports coach in a club, but actually what have I got that demonstrates my status beyond that job role? I might be a children's development specialist. That might be my area. I might be good at working with special populations or people with disabilities or long-term health conditions or a range of things. And what we want to start doing now, and our next step as an organisation, CIMSPA 3.0, if you will, is about creating a system where we recognise people for the specialisms and the statuses that they can have amongst their job role. And that will create this kind of career map so people can move through. The analogy we use at CIMSPA is, imagine a tube map. You're starting at Euston. You want to get to Queen's Park is your CEO of a big leisure chain. Where you're starting is qualified sports coach. How do I get there? What stops do I need to get off at and do a bit of learning? And where do I need to pick up some experience? And what CPD do I need to do to take that journey and move across the sector? And that's the other thing as well, is that we want people to be recognised for the skills that they've got, but perhaps in different sector industries. Just because I'm in leisure doesn't mean I have to do lifeguard, leisure assistant, GM, senior manager. Work my way up in that one. You might be relevant for a franchise that operates a sports coaching model, or you might be relevant in the world of swimming, or you might have governance skills that lend themselves to a national governing body. So creating that career map is really important. And again, all of these things, once we start to create it and shape it, people will feel that they own it, and that will lead to that public recognition piece as well.
Oh, we probably touched on this already. I was going to ask you what you feel like the, I guess, distance travel's been since you were in that position, that sports coaching position, to now, if someone entering the industry at this point rather than then. I know we touched on a lot of it, but what would you say is the main difference between the sector over the last 10, 15 years?
The mapping of programs and the work with employers is a huge step forward. Huge step forward, because it means that we're listening to the voice of the employer to make sure that people, to make sure that training organisations and education partners are collaborating to create programs that fit the mould and the market that people will be going into. So you won't be sold a qualification where the skill set doesn't align to a certain job that you could go for afterwards. So that's probably the biggest move, and making sure that standards come through and are built into that, so that CIMSPA recognise it, so that the employer understands this common language of, you're recognised by the Chartered Institute, you've got a qualification from a recognised training provider, and you've got a skill set that I can see and specialist statuses that we can use because we've told the sector what we needed as employers, and therefore that opportunity is there. So I think that's probably the key, James, on that one.
What about the future, Ollie, in terms of what do you think, I guess, the landscape looks like in 10 years? Are we looking at a virtual delivery? I don't know, Facebook's looking at the metaverse, all these other things that they're promoting, that physical activity is going to be a huge part of it. And generally, people in uni now, probably the jobs they're going to be doing 5 or 10 years out don't exist yet, a lot of them. So do you have like kind of a grand vision or thoughts of it, where things are heading, or is it just to kind of improve what we're doing at the moment?
Yeah, technology and digital, it's here to stay. And I think embracing it and using it to support services is great. I think we work in a sector that will always be practical and active. I think we just see more products and mediums for delivering activity or supporting people to be active, like your Pelotons and like your Facebook Metaverse or your Apple Fit.
Joe Wicks did it as well. Like I said, lockdown, he was delivering to millions of children every morning, wasn't he?
Exactly. Yeah, right through your TV, and it's awesome. And people developed nice long-term habits around that, and there will always be this digital presence now within the sector, and if people can adapt their skill set to deliver in that setting as well, I don't think that will harm anything. I think it will support it, but it's up to you. If you run a business, or you're walking out of university, or you didn't go to university but you've got an idea for a business in the sector, and it's activity based, or it's about bringing together communities or delivering programs, then look at technology and how it can support you. But there is no one size fits all, as you know. It's use the platforms to communicate where your audience are. If you want customers, use platforms that can support you running your business. If it's a business that you're building that needs some support financially, and like transaction software, for example, that exists. So it's about doing the research, and like I said, with the analogy of the self-service checkouts, embrace it, learn it, understand it, don't fear it, and then work out what works for you and build it from there.
I love that. In terms of a bit more personal now, a couple of questions. In terms of your style, your leadership style, over the years, obviously you've worked with other CEOs, leaders, entrepreneurs. I'm sure you picked up things that you talked about with your dad as well in terms of the coaching side. What's your kind of leadership philosophy or approach that you've maybe developed for yourself?
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
Always working on it. That is my philosophy.
That's probably the key, right? Yeah, always be working.
100%. Always be aware of it. Always work on it. Don't ever connect with one person and only work with one person. Observe lots of different people. Choose who you work with very carefully, and just absorb as much as you can. And I've been really lucky to have some absolute industry leaders really pour time and effort into my development. I had an amazing coach on the commercial world that taught me the psychology of sales, which was just so useful at a point that I really needed that education, and I'm really grateful for that. And then working with Tara at CIMSPA, I've learned a huge amount about setting a culture and making sure that people subscribe to that culture, and revisiting that even at times where the business dictates that you need to do other things. Making sure that your voice and the culture piece is reinforced, and that teams and people can subscribe to it and create their own. One of my own professional development CPD things was last year I went to Harvard. Well, I didn't go to Harvard because we were on lockdown. So I enrolled in a course in Harvard University that was called Public Narrative and Leadership. And it was all about creating your own personal story and communicating that in a way that people can connect to it and come on the journey with you, because it was a missing piece for me. And I thought I now need to kind of build my own brand around leadership as well. But leadership is a practice that evolves. So my theory is constantly work on it, constantly shape who you are. And I think if there was anything specific, I would say that the people and culture has to be the key.
What's I've got hidden curriculum concepts as a note to speak to you about. I mean, is that something you've come up with, or is that something that you use day in, day out?
Hidden curriculum came out of that program. It was kind of my manifesto, was this hidden curriculum piece, and it links into everything that we've talked about. It's the curriculum that you're never taught that you pick up naturally.
Right, so kind of life experience, nurture versus nature, kind of that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly that. It's what you absorb through osmosis, and what are those key skills that, like the communicating your value after university, no one teaches you, but by putting yourself out there, you learn what you don't like and what you do like and what goes well for you, and you use that and embody it and shape it and bring that into everything that you do. So hidden curriculum is, there's no education provider or school or business leader that's going to teach you exactly what it is, but building the hidden curriculum or discovering the hidden curriculum is so important. I forgot that I put that in my research.
No, I'm just saying, in terms of, I mean, for me, that's a huge one, because it's almost like you were going to develop this kind of perfect pathway, but I guess you learn the most about yourself when you have big knocks in life or career, etc. So, or kind of transition, turning point moments. But yeah, okay, I guess you got to plan that into someone's pathway, can you?
Yeah, you can't teach it. It's just constantly getting back on the horse and being committed. It's like, why do you get out of bed in the morning? That's the key. What is the purpose? We're in a world where you can pretty much choose what you want to do now. If you've got the skills, and if you haven't got the skills, there's at the touch of a button you can learn them, because we've got the internet. So it's what do you want to do? Why do you get out of bed? And if you can nail that bit, then it's easy to get back on the horse when things don't go well.
Yeah. So talking about getting out of bed, do you have a daily routine? Do you have a daily routine that you kind of follow, or any habits that you follow or put in place to help your performance?
This is going to be my next course, James.
So you still don't do the 5:30 in the gym? Like, not going back to that?
No, 100% not. I'd love to say that I do, but no, I don't. 3-year-old daughter destroys any program.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
That is my program. I often get up early, and I find that when the house is quiet and before everyone's up, it's my kind of time to catch up on stuff or do a little bit of reading or get all my emails done. I can often find that by knocking out an hour and a half of work with a coffee in the morning is a really good way to do. It's probably awful for people's mental health, so I'm not necessarily suggesting that other people follow that advice. It just works for me. The evenings for me tends to be when I do my sport. I play squash now with friends, and I'll go for a run every now and again, but physical activity needs to get back on my personal radar as well.
Yeah, but I mean, also that challenge, like I've got young children as well, that kind of time challenge, that time pressure that you never had before. Like you're talking before, you could pour hours into your work in your previous roles and stuff like that. But now it's like a real balancing act, right? So you got kind of, obviously you got the guilt of if you're working all the time or you want to spend time with them, they're growing, etc. That for me anyway, for me that's been a challenge in terms of making the best use of your time, because you haven't really got it. Like you couldn't stay up all night, but you used to be able to.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, it's a balance that everyone has to go through, and I think everyone kind of creates their own way of doing it, and you can feel when you're slightly out of balance, and hopefully you can recognize it in yourself and pull that back in. Jake Humphreys that we were talking about earlier, one of the main reasons that Jake, out of all of the other amazing people that we could have pulled in for that program, got my attention was because he outwardly said something that I think I just really subscribe to it. And I think what a role model to say this. And it's completely away from his skill set and his presentation ability. But he said, regardless of where he is in the world, he will fly back from Munich after presenting the Champions League just to be at home with his kids and get into bed with his partner. And I think that's pretty special. And even if it's 4 a.m, because I grilled his team member that set everything up for us on it, and I said, he really does it. And I thought that's brilliant. And you can't always not stay away if it makes sense to stay away, but I thought that's really good, like balancing the family and keeping the kind of the base at home happy and being present there is so important. And then you let everything else on top of that where you can. But something has to give. Sport will give, or your fitness will give, or work will give, or family will give, but it's just a balance.
Just trying to balance all the plates. I mean, last question, we always ask all of our guests this, is just a reflection. So if you could go back to, let's say, 21-year-old self, just finished uni, or even 19 before, and if you go back to your younger self and give yourself one piece of advice, what would that be?
I was hoping I'd have something really philosophical. Don't. Everything's always all right, and don't worry too much. Don't worry too much. Just keep going. Surround yourself with really decent people. If someone's helping you, make sure that you give that back as well. I reference some of the people that I've learned from that have helped me in my career, and being able to play with the train set and learning about sales from Dave and that kind of thing. It's brilliant. Now, give that back to others and make sure that when you go into events in the sector, if you work in the sector, you're looking out for the people that are up and coming that maybe actually feel a bit anxious about being there. Remember how you felt. And I think when we're shaping, and linking back to the CIMSPA, when we're shaping and recognizing respect, we're on a journey to do something. It's not there yet, and it's not going to be handed to us on a plate. So help the young, hungry, ambitious people and give back to them, because they're the ones that are going to be our leaders in a couple of years' time.
No, I love that, Ollie. Just want to say thanks for your time, giving all the insights as well. Your story, your journey particularly is really going to resonate. That narrative of how you've got to where you are, definitely for people starting out in the industry, and members of CIMSPA is really going to be able to take that on board. So thanks for your time. I appreciate you coming on today.
Love it. Love the podcast. So thanks ever so much for having me, James. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this week's show. You can subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can write to us at dryphase.podcast@coordinate.cloud, tweet us at coordinatesport, or follow us on Instagram at coordinate_sports, or on my account at James_ventures. This episode was produced by Nancy Kwamboka, with support from Claire Goodchild and Lola Small, with special thanks to Rochelle. I'm James Moore, and you've been listening to The Drive Phase from Coordinate Sport.